Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Weekly Hall of Fame show. And if you're wondering where Evan is, so am I. I don't know where the hell he went, but it's okay. It's okay. I found somebody else who was going to help us out. I'm Kirk Buchner. I run NotInHallOfFame.com, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame, the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. So if Evan's not going to be here, you got to get somebody who's also part of the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. And I've got someone who is, look at you representing the Astros. Dave Whitlock, Longhorn Dave, on Twitter, on all sorts of social media. I'm so happy to have you here. We haven't done something you and I just together in a while, so this should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll bring a little change up to the repertoire. We'll talk your usual stuff. It's been a big sports week. I mean, there's just a lot going on with the Olympics starting and several other major sports events, and baseball and basketball gearing up and football starting. So yeah, I can't wait to talk about everything in Hall of Fame world and sports world in general.
So Dave is also a big part. He's one of the nominees for, or nominators rather.
I was gonna say, what am I nominated for?
Well, sometimes I screw up. A nominator for the United States Athletic Hall of Fame. And you've seen, I assume that you've seen like who has gone through.
Right.
Who have you voted for? Because you were one of the voters, along with some Olympians, along with some Pro Football Hall of Famers. Like it's a pretty cool crew. So like, have you seen who got through, and have you seen who didn't?
I took a brief look, and I didn't do an overwhelming study on who I put in or not, but I'll tell you, it was a very difficult. I mean, this is a wonderful project. First of all, it's great that we get to look across so many sports, and in my blog and my posting and things like that, I like to focus on the breadth of sports. The fact that there's so many different, it's not just football, basketball, baseball, that there's triathletes or Olympians and men, women. We keep it diverse, right? It's not, and so one of the areas I struggled in when I submitted my ballot was, how do I balance? I'm a baseball fan, so I'm probably more prone to put in some baseball guys, particularly classic guys. But I wanted to put a breadth in, so I actually I put my first 25 down. I realized I was too biased, and then I look back. I said, in another area I was biased is some of the NBA basketball that I grew up with. How do you put a David Robinson against a Charles Barkley, against a Shaquille O'Neal, against Reggie Miller? It's like all of them are great American athletes, but I could fill out 25 people just with those stars of my childhood. So I tried to kind of divide it up and conquer. I tried to do older, more classic persons, more new persons. I had no problem. We tried to make a concerted effort to include women because, quite frankly, women's sports up until 1990, maybe the 94 or whatever year it was, women's World Cup team really hadn't had the awakening that it had, and so. Looking at some of the classic golfers, look at some of the classic tennis players of the earlier eras.
Okay, so Dave, was that
yeah,
a big part of your ballot when you were sort
yeah,
of like putting that forth through for like to make sure that there was female representation?
yeah. I filled it out with that in mind, that I want to not just, okay, let's just put in, let's say I had 25 slots. Let's not put in 10 football, 10 baseball, 10 men's basketball. Let's talk about uh, Cheryl Swoop, Cheryl Miller. Let's talk about some of the classics, some of those earlier United States female soccer players, hockey players, things like that. How do you put a later era female hockey player against somebody from like a Jimmy Fox or something like that from classic baseball. And so you have to balance it. And so I tried to put a ballot in that reflected eras, genders, and sports. I put in several Olympians. I think I put in a jockey, in horse racing. You just try to mix it up because I think it's important for the Hall of Fame. You don't want to be
Right.
that. One area I struggled was men's hockey, American men's hockey. There's just not a strong candidacy considering the competition. So there were some decent candidates on the ballot, but when you get down to 25 out of 100 and whatever, I'm not sure I even put one in to get on the ballot. Now let alone there's some on the ballot now that we're going to try to vote through, but so it was a challenge. It was fun. I sat there. I remember, I don't know where I was going, but I sat there on a airline flight, just kind of with a piece of paper, so scratching off and lining and jotting down. And so it's a wonderful project to be involved in. It's obviously the early infancy of it. By the time we get 10 or 5-10 years down the road, we're going to find a lot of there's a lot of really good candidates right now. It's a bottleneck because we're just starting, but I think this project is great to be involved in, and I think we're going to see a lot of worthy American athletes put into the U.S. Hall of Fame.
And I'm really happy that you're part of this.
Well, thank you for including me. I'm glad to be on the ground floor.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
So before we sort of go into the weekly show, it's not often that I get to talk to somebody who was actually at a core Hall of Fame, in lifetime. So you were at the Baseball Hall of Fame recently. So I'd love to hear your what happened there for you.
Sure. Yeah. So we're recording this on Wednesday. So some 96 hours ago, I was walking the halls of the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, the Baseball Hall of Fame, National Baseball Hall of Fame. You got to kind of couch it. And I say that because it's not the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. It's not the International Baseball Hall of Fame. It's the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So focused on American players, athletes, et cetera. There's a Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. There's others. There's debate among whether we should have more Japanese representation, et cetera. So I'll put that aside. But so sitting there, I started going in 2015, and this is my 7th induction weekend out of the last now 10 years. A couple of COVID interruptions, plus one I just couldn't make. But I love the induction weekend. It really is like a reunion of baseball fans. And so what I mean by that is, every year, depending upon the induction class, there's, 20 to 60,000 folks that descend upon a very small New York town to really celebrate baseball. So no matter where you are, people are wearing all jerseys. You could walk around and find literally every Major League Baseball jersey worn by somebody, whether there's somebody of their team going in or not. It's just kind of a party where you go and really Saturday. So the induction ceremony is on Sunday. That is, the one you see on TV, and that's where you hear the good speeches and all that. Saturday is kind of the pre-party, so to speak, where a lot of fans descend upon the museum and the big parade that goes down Main Street around 6 o'clock local time. And in that parade, each Hall of Famer that returned comes down on the back of a pickup truck and waves to fans one by one. They're usually between 45 and 55 Hall of Famers. And that to me is really the highlight, because that's when you get really close to them. At the ceremony, they're all kind of in the background. If you've seen you watch the ceremony, you're really distanced from them. But when they're walking right in front of you, just like you'd be sitting on the side of your local street, seeing Billy Williams or Rod Carew or Johnny Bench or Ozzie Smith or Chipper Jones or Mariano Rivera, whoever those guys are that you like, just right there, it's the best experience you can get really close to them. The weather is great. The museum is amazing. It may not be best to visit on induction weekend, but it takes at least a couple days to go through and see. It's really a good tribute to history of baseball. If you're a historian like I am, there's certainly you'll find something from your local team. You'll find some history and you'll learn a few things. So it was really a great weekend. I highly endorse it. I plan to go every weekend. I'm healthy enough and have the means and schedule to do so. But it was great. It was a great class. Todd Helton, Joey Mauer, um, Adrian Beltre, of course, was the highlight. Most of the fans were there to see Mauer, really. Minnesota probably had the biggest contingency, and then Jim Leland, of course, the manager. But you see fans from all different fan bases. Everybody's there, and even the good sparring amongst rivals is all mellowed out by just being there to celebrate what's going on.
So my question to you, you're going there. Billy Wagner did not get in, but you were going to go anyway, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because like you've been there. I'm trying to think of our first conversation, which safe to say, like, tell me if I'm wrong. You've been there like 6 times in the last 6 years.
Uh, I've been 7 times in 10 years.
Okay.
Take away 2020 and 2021, I've been 3 straight years. I've been 22, 23, 24, and then I went 17, 18, 19. 2020, there was no ceremony. COVID canceled. 2021, they put something together for, like, they delayed it till September. I mean, people forget 2021, you still couldn't just fly around like everything was normal. And so they postponed it, I think, till midweek. And that was the year. It was a strange sequence. So 2020, I think it was Larry Walker, Ted Simmons, Derek Jeter, and I'm probably missing someone. And the Jeter year was going to be the big year. In 2019, everybody's like, Jeter next year, Jeter next year. It's going to be set all the all-time records for people showing up. Everybody's going to come from New York. Everybody's going to fly in. Well, 2020 was when he's supposed to be inducted. And of course, the whole year was scrubbed. No ceremony, no induction. 2021 was one of those awful years where there's no electees to the Hall of Fame. The baseball writers put nobody in. But at least they had the holdover class from 2020 to put in. And like I said, they did it midweek. I think September, first week of September. So Jeter really kind of got a short straw. It probably would have been the all-time greatest attendance of all, of a ceremony, but because it was midweek and still difficult travel. But so those 2 years I missed, but from 17 to 20 to this year, I've not missed any except that one year.
Is there okay? So for this year particularly, you're not Houston's not represented,
That's right.
right? So like, what was your purpose?
Yeah, to go. So I started in 2015 with Biggio. He was the first Houston player to wear a Houston cap. Nolan Ryan wore a Rangers cap. That's a different discussion for a different day. And I really enjoyed it. And Houston took over the town. It just was, we were thirsty. We loved it. 2016, I think, was Griffey and Piazza. I just didn't go. And then 2017, Bagwell got in. And so I went back. I said, well, I went for Biggio. I'm going to go for Bagwell. Those are my two guys. And at that point, I just realized it was just so much fun. It's a carefree weekend. You get to celebrate with other baseball fans. You meet, of course, new people from all over the country. It's always wide representation. So after 2017, I just decided I would go every year. I just said, I'm going to circle on my calendar, get up there. And also, I mentioned the parade earlier. So no matter what year you go, all the previous guys go through. So every year I've been, I've seen Biggio go through the parade. I've seen Bagwell go through the parade. And so I can cheer them. And so if I had representation, it would be those two guys going through the parade and seeing them every year. And so it's just kind of a pilgrimage at this point.
Were you thinking at this point that Wagner was going to get in?
Yeah, he's right on the edge. And so I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was touch and go. If you follow the way that the Baseball Hall of Fame numbers are tracked, anything of the public ballots is going to be reduced by private ballots. Private ballots are typically conservative. They don't put in as many people. The guys could be girls, but it's mostly guys, submit empty ballots, that type of thing. So you'll see a guy tracking like 78, 79%. It's going to be enough, not going to be enough. So he didn't get in, and that was his 9th year. So next year will be his last year. So Saturday I was wearing a Billy Wagner jersey around advertising. Not that there's any voters there, but as an Astros fan, it was my obligation. So I hope next year on Saturday it will be Billy Wagner getting in. The last ballot bump, perhaps. We're not sure how to treat relief pitchers yet. You know, there's that classic, the Fingers, the Gossages, and the Suitors that would go 2-3 innings.
Well,
And
fair.
then became, you know, the two Hoffman and Rivera obvious guys. But, you know, what do you do with a Francisco K-Rod, Francisco Rodriguez? Or what do you do with when Kimbrel gets there? You know, they have tons of saves. John Franco is up there in saves, and he's not really gotten a sniff. Wagner's numbers from a ERA, strikeouts, WHIP perspective are as good as they come, but didn't pitch 1,000 innings and didn't pitch well in the postseason. So I understand if he doesn't get in, but I think next year he'll be in. It'll be tough. I think Ichiro's on the ballot, maybe Sabathia.
Okay, so I'll go with the whole Wagner thing. I'm not big on Wagner, as you know.
Yep.
What am I missing? I'm going Wagner.
Yeah, you're missing the absolute fact that if you take a guy who was the best at their position or top 2 or 3 for an extended period of time, he would have been the guy, like the guy you didn't want to face if you're a batter. The absolute dominant stuff, the low ERA, the high strikeout rates, the low WHIP, you know, walks plus hits on innings pitched. He was as good as some of the other guys in. That's never an excuse because there's always somebody that's as good as the guys in that doesn't get in. There's always people that are in that probably shouldn't be, but he just was elite for an extended period of time across multiple teams, the Mets, the Phillies, the Astros. And so it just feels like, I mean, if you don't like closers, you don't like closers. I get that. But
no, for me, it's not that, but go
yeah,
on.
and I take postseason, he was on a relatively small sample size. He wasn't as dominant as certainly like a Rivera or someone like that. Or even Ryan Presley, the current Astros closer. I always take postseason as kind of like can add but not subtract because it's such a short sample size. I mean, Biggio and Bagwell were bad in the postseason. They had a couple postseasons. They never really performed that great. Not as good as like a Lance Berkman or even a Terry Poole, one of your fellow Canadian baseball players. So, you know, if you're a Kurt Schilling, who I think should get in, and you have those postseason performances, that adds to your legacy, but I'm not going to take away that he had a short sample size. So I just feel like he was one of the elite guys for tons of all-stars, tons of everything for multiple years. I feel like he belongs in. Of course, I'm biased, but I would understand if he doesn't. You know, I see both sides of it. I've engaged in many a Hall of Fame debate where, you know, I'll die on the hill that, you know, Dwight Evans or Don Mattingly should be in the Hall of Fame. I was like, well, they're pretty close. Either way, you know, if Harold Baines didn't get in, I wouldn't say, well, what's going on here? So
Harold Baines messed up a lot.
he did almost have 3,000 hits, tons of All-Star games.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, I think Billy Wagner was an elite closer for long enough and has some of the key leading all-time metrics like ERA, strikeouts per 9 that at least warrant some serious consideration.
Okay, so we have a section here where, well, just gonna make sure that I've got this here, where we look at those who we lost in the last little while here. Okay, here we go. So Evan does this way better than I do in terms of sort of like his compassion and whatnot. So, but there's a few people who we lost in the last week who I think we should sort of like look at. Dave, I mentioned you're going to be paying a lot of attention to the Olympics, no?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a big fan of the Olympics and the the breadth. I'm not an expert by any means on certain athletes or historian of it, but enjoy the pageantry and the diversity of sport.
Yeah, vice versa. We lost Kevin Gospard. He was a silver medalist in the 4x 456 Olympics, representing Australia, but he would later become a very big wig for the IOC committee. It was named there for 77, so we lost him. Uh, Here's a boxer I remember. Let's see if you do. Richie Sandoval.
I don't.
Okay.
What country?
USA. Uh,
Oh,
Bantamweight champion. And he was part of the, and again, sort of like goes back to the Olympics, right? So like he was in the 84 Olympics in LA, one of the people who sort of like carried the flag because potentially he would have been part of the 1980 Olympics in Moscow.
the boycott. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he had a 29-1 record as a bantamweight.
Yeah, I read some. I mean, we did take a diversion here. So I read some recent articles that boxing's on the way out of the Olympics, and to me that was one of the biggest, not draws, but things I remember. I remember Evander Holyfield, in the Olympics, and
Yeah, for sure.
some of the other big names that made their way. But I heard they're reducing classes, and they're reducing participants, both particularly on the men's side, but also the women's side as well. So it's a shame. It was one of the funner, more entertaining, because it was just 3 rounds. They had the head things on, which is different. Like you don't see
Right.
that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so it was really technical. You weren't gonna, Mike Tyson a guy out of it, but it's too bad if what I'm reading is what's happening. It's hard to keep track of all the Olympic sports, but certainly in the 80s and early 90s, boxing was a big part of it. That was, one of the bigger sports we would, as Americans, we would send athletes to, and we'd watch them,
Hmm?
and keep track of them.
No, for sure. Uh, we lost a couple of musicians. Jerry Miller, the guitarist of Moby Grape. Remember Moby Grape?
I do not remember Moby Grape.
Well, neither do I. But so
You
he's
stumped me on that one. Is this a music show or a sports show? Just kidding.
well, a bit of both. A bit
A
of
bit
both.
of both. Hey, we're
A bit of
yeah,
both.
that's on,
But
man.
but there's actually a big musician for me. Maybe not for you. Jerry Mayall uh, died at the age of 90. He was part. He was the leader of the Blues Breakers.
Okay.
So the Blues Breakers were uh, well, they just got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you listen to like Cream, Yardbirds, whatever, it's all part of him.
Wow.
Yeah. So part of the Blues Breakers, John McVie, uh, Fleetwood Mac, or Clapton,
Mhm.
Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac, Jack Bruce, Cream, Mick Taylor. He was part of the Rolling Stones for a while. Harvey Mendel from Camp Heat. So musically wise, this is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I understand. And I did forget that a part of this Hall of Fame portfolio does involve a strong piece of music as well. So
Yeah, I tried.
yeah, I'm not as engaged with you on those. Because I have the expertise. I kind of think I have some thoughts on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame left for
Oh,
that.
what are your thoughts on it? I love to
Well,
hear.
it just seems like a panoply of anybody that played good music over, the last 3 decades, whether it's rock and roll or not.
Not the
Um,
worst thing.
yeah, no, it's just fine. It's inclusive. It's very inclusive. And I'm glad Ozzy Osbourne's getting in this year. He's one of my favorites, so I'll just leave it at that.
Well, we lost a couple other ones. Mike Ferraro from baseball. Brief runs with the Yankees and the Seattle Pilots. One, he was a World Series champions with the Kansas City Royals in '85.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm not familiar with that name. I remember watching that World Series. And so, yeah, no, I usually am deep on 25-man rosters, but that one escaped me.
Yeah. Well, we got a pretty big football reference. Abner Haynes.
Mhm.
Uh, so it's kind of funny, like when we talk about like the history of the Kansas City Chiefs, you got to remember those years beforehand, and Abner Haynes was a big part of that. Rookie of the Year 1960 in the AFL, uh, MVP in some places,
Oh,
and 1962 with the Dallas Texans was a champion.
wow. Yeah, the early, yeah, Dallas Texans, the early Kansas City Chiefs. Um that's why I'm not as a historian of the game of that, but pretty neat stuff. That's in a loss. Yeah, it's crazy. Some of those, to see this guy's pre-Super Bowl era, but the first Super Bowl era guys are kind of reaching their max capacity. If they were played in the late 60s, they were born in the 40s and they're all 80 now. So
Well, I guess we get kicked out of this one because, like, of the Chiefs, who are the big team right now, who was their first big star? This is the guy.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
good point. Yeah.
Yeah. But the last person who we lost, somebody who was a big deal for me as a failed comedian, Bob Newhart.
That was a tough one. Yeah, that was a pretty high profile celebrity, and he lived a long life. He's into his 90s, but I always watched the Newhart show. The later one, the one with the my brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl, the Woodsman guys.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
and of course, a lot of people in current times remember his work in Elf. It's one of his last kind of main movies. But yeah, he was comedic genius, a little deadpan, sense of humor, great actor, great interview. You see him on some of the old Johnny Carson shows. Really, really great, and a big loss.
You mentioned his old deadpan. It's like he gets sort of like there is a joke that he's waiting 30 seconds and it works.
That's right. It was you knew it would come and you knew it would be funny. Like there was no he he never pandered to the, I guess, cheaper humor, lower level. It was always kind of deeper thought and more profound.
I saw that like one of his best friends back in the day was Don Rickles, which is great because like I love Don Rickles too. But
I
it's
love
like
Don Rickles.
those, yeah, right. But though their two comedic
Yeah.
things don't seem to jive,
Right.
but it did. Best compliment I ever got in my lowly run in high school was like, I think you can sort of like do a comedy like Hartman, like or like Bob Newhart.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Best thing I ever heard in my life.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. And yeah, you said a big loss for the Hollywood industry, and he was, yeah, he did so much. He was a very diverse talent, acting, speaking interviews, comedic. He wasn't a one trick pony.
Yeah, so true. So we got two more sections to do
Yep.
as we're doing this, and I threw this at you, which was because you do a great thing on your website, which is
The LHD Sportsman of the Week.
well, I was gonna do that, but you sort of like broke me there, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I'd like you for you to do is who is that, and because Evan Nolan, my partner, always does like good, bad, and ugly. You can sort of like do that, boom, boom, boom. But who's your big guy for the week? And if you want to do one who is ugly and bad, please tell me.
Oh yeah, no, I've got it all lined up, Kirk. I'm ready to fill in.
Okay.
So, my good for the week is again diversity of sport. I love the Tour de France. I love to watch the tour, all 3 weeks of it. And every year produces different stories, different backgrounds. And so my current Sportsman of the Week is Beniam Girmay. He's an Eritrean cyclist that won the green jersey. So the general classification, of course, we all know is the yellow jersey. That means you had the lowest time overall of the 3 weeks. But there's also a green jersey category for sprints. And so they reward folks that end first on flat stages and things like that. And so Girmay won 3 stages in the Tour de France of the 21, and he was a little bit unexpected. But the fact that he's from Eritrea, you know, Africa, was the first African to win a stage, and so that was pretty exciting stuff. And he held off a significant challenge from Jasper Philipsen, who was the favorite in the green jersey. They both won 3 stages, but in head-to-head, Girmay triumphed. So he's my Sportsman of the Week. But I'll do an adjacent for what I have as my good is the overall general classification winner, Tadej Pogačar, the Slovenian rider. It's just he won his third Tour de France. He's only 25 years old. And he really was a dominant performance in all aspects. He climbed well. He was able to fend his main rival, Jonas Vingegaard, off several times. And it was one of the most dominant performances we've seen since Lance Armstrong, when there were some questionable circumstances surrounding his performance. And so I'll say for the good was a great Tour de France. It's these days you can only get it on Peacock. They used to be on NBC Sports, which is no longer a network. And so it's on early. If you watch 4 to 5 hours of it, it's mostly just guys riding bikes around France. But there's certain strategy with it, and I appreciate it for sure, and enjoyed watching. So that was the good. Do you want me to go to a bad now, or you want to comment on that?
No, go ahead.
All right. So I think I don't know if you covered it last week, but I'll say the bad was some of the, I love Major League Baseball, wearing it, but the All-Star game is veering off course from where I would like to see it go. I still think it's the best All-Star game of all the sports, because I think it's natural that you can play the game at a competitive level, unlike NFL and NBA, where it's just a joke. But 2 things. One is I'm sick of the generic uniforms that the teams wear. So the bad is that they make them wear these American and national uniforms. I think, that you look on the field, you literally can't tell who's who. You look at some old footage and you'll see, I saw one in the last week where Dave Parker in right field was throwing to Gary Carter at catcher. And I'll be darned if you can mistake a Pittsburgh Pirates uniform in right field versus the Montreal Expos uniform at catcher. Tagging out somebody like a New York Yankees, Greg Nettles or something like that. Like, you see what's going on, you see the players, but now you watch the game and you can barely tell what's going on because all the players are wearing the same jerseys. They do substitutions every half inning. And they may even announce it between half innings, so-and-so's in the left and at second base, but you just can't keep track. Compounding that, they have diverged from covering the game to doing in-game interviews. They mic guys up. They mic guys up in the dugout. They want to interview managers and coaches. I mean, I remember some big plays were going on, and they got Aaron Judge, who a great player. And they say, what do you think about playing next to Juan Soto? What's it like playing next to him as a guy's hitting a double down the left field line? You don't know who it is because you don't know what jersey he's wearing. It might be his only at bat in his all-star history. His family's going to look back at this and be like, why are we watching? Are they covering the game, or are they interviewing Aaron Judge, which they could have done pregame? You could ask Aaron Judge pregame, what's it like to play with Juan Soto? What's it like? What do you think your chances are? They'll cut into the game and they'll do some interviews with Ken Rosenthal, like, who's going to be traded, who's going to be doing this. Again, before the game, after the game, Sports Center, not during the game when somebody's getting it at bat. So I wish they would clean up I wish they put the original uniforms on players and clean up the coverage of the game and cover the game. Any thoughts on that before I go to the ugly?
No, it's awesome. I loved it.
I'm on a roll. So So the ugly is a potential, and I'm covering multiple sports here. So the United States men's basketball team in the Olympics has not been as dominant as people might have expected in the first exhibition season, shall we call it. They had a really close call against South Sudan,
I did see
which
that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, which was a 40-point underdog. I think they have Luol Deng on their team, but I mean, you're talking Luol Deng, who wouldn't be on the third American team versus
True.
American, all world players. I think they've done a better job of constructing roster on the U.S. American team. They used to just kind of pick all stars and hope they gel, but they've actually put some thought into younger guys, older guys, bigger guys, swing guys, shooter guys. Uh, but it's not working so far. I know Steve Kerr is a good coach. We've seen
Yes,
him
yeah, yeah.
blend older and younger talent. He took Kevin Durant onto his team, won championship. He knows how to deal with Curry. So certainly, I'm not saying it's a coaching issue, but and then I think they had to kind of struggle against Germany, who's one of the better teams. So at least say Germany. But I mean, you still looking at the German roster, that's not going to beat
Dennis
it.
Schroeder, yes.
Right? Fine. But you took the German team, they're going to beat an NBA team. So what is why are these guys not gelling fast enough? I guess we'll find out. I think there's
Mhm.
low risk that they will not get out of pool play. I think that's, even though South Sudan lurks in the wings, I think they've scouted them by now. But I think the ugly could be you get to a knockout round, and anything we've all seen basketball games happen where an elite team loses to a bad team because they have a bad day, bad shooting day, etc.
Right.
No longer can we just we United States push ourselves through via easy by exerting our talent. There's going to be a lot of good teams. France has Wembanyama, of course. You got Doncic and Nikolai Jokic out there. A bunch
Yeah.
of MVPs. They're gonna have their hands full. You're gonna get to the round of 8 and round of 4, and they're not gonna be able to wing it on LeBron James driving the lane the late in the game, and not get a call one way or the other. So the ugly could be this could be the year that the United States, which I think of rosters constructed well. They, like I said, they have some younger guys, but they need to figure out a way to gel in the next couple of weeks, or it could be ugly.
Selfishly, as a Canadian, I think that I won a little bit of money. I'll admit that. I
Yep.
won some scratch when Canada did better than the United States in the last 2022.
Like a World Cup type thing.
Yeah, yeah, the FIBAs.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I just read that LeBron's going to be carrying the American flag going into the Olympics. Great. I don't know, but
Yeah, I'd always like to see somebody from a more minor sport. LeBron James has had tons of praise. I'd rather see a track guy or swimming guy or a
sure, sure. But I mean, like,
equestrian guy. But what it is, what it is. But
yeah.
he's the face of American athletics. If he's not in our Hall of Fame now, he will be in the USA Hall of Fame as soon as he turns the calendar 12 more
Well,
years.
also, he doesn't have to come here.
Yeah, yeah.
He does not have to sort of like represent the U.S. in this tournament. I love this tournament. I'm so excited. Like, I'll look at for somebody who does not give a crap at the end of the day in terms of what I'm going to watch.
Right.
Basketball for me is my biggest tournament.
Nice.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
right now, I don't care. I know that Canada's going to win a bunch of stuff, but for what? For things that I don't know.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
so, oh God, we just won something in kayak. Really? Yay!
Yeah.
But no, like realistically, me as a sports fan, like I'm most excited about basketball, men's and women's.
And women's, yeah, women's basketball is,
Yeah.
the American women are much more. I think the rest of the world is still catching up more than the men's side, but they'll be challenged. It's a great team. It's fun to. I think the WNBA All Stars beat the American women
They
in the All
did.
Star
They
game.
they they
Yeah,
did.
so that was a fun way to stage that game. And of course, the Caitlin Clark story, which is another story for another day. But
Yeah, I could go on and on and on about that.
right.
I
But
have a whole sort of like pitch of why I should be the commissioner.
Commissioner Buchner, I'm down.
Yeah, it's never gonna happen. But still,
No,
I'm so excited about this stuff. Also too, like I think in like 1 month, 2 months, we're gonna sort of like say like, okay, like who sort of like made their Hall of Fame case,
right? Yeah, we're all
right?
watching. Yeah, because
Yeah,
some of the athletes, they literally only have every 4 years to make their case. Some of the Olympians on the USA Hall of Fame ballot, it's like you're basically hanging your hat on one, maybe two Olympics.
hmm
But if dominant enough and you make the story, you can be deserving. So there's a lot of stakes going on.
like the person who I'm so excited for. Again, I'm Canadian, but still, Shakari Richardson is one of my favorite people.
Yep,
Period. I hope she kicks ass.
absolutely. Me too. She's
Yeah.
so fun to watch.
Yeah. Don't know whether she will or won't, but still.
Right?
Uh,
Nope.
yeah. Wah, wah. Okay, so with that, do we have any more to cover off?
Not that, no, I cover multiple sports. Yeah, like I said, it's an exciting time of year. I think, the next 2 weeks, Olympics are going to dominate. You finished golf last week with what they call it the Open Championship. We call it the British Open. Even some motorsports are taking a couple weeks break. So it's going to be all about the Olympics. And I think it's going to be a lot of exciting action. I know it's the time of year we used to tune in to watch whatever's happening. If it's judo, if it's fencing, if it's track, if it's swimming, there's always something to watch.
Oh, for sure. Dave, thanks so much for coming on this.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
You bet.
much appreciated that. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, hey, take some time. www.notinhalloffame.com. Also, www.usahof.com. Because
Oh,
that is where you can vote for everything that we put together.
absolutely.
Yeah. If you can, do this, please. Big respect. Something that means a lot to us. All right, that's it. That's all I got.
Absolutely. Fun times. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the time. I don't know if I went longer or shorter than Evan usually goes on the good, the
Nah,
bad, the ugly, but
that's what I do.
but I have some opinions. But I appreciate everybody watching this and engaging in the socials that Kirk just talked about.
Thanks so much. Wherever you are, wherever you may be, make today count. Take care.